There's Showdown NFL tonight for Titans-Packers with $500,000 to first place on DraftKings. And by the end of this video, you're going to know 3 things that everybody out there is going to be building their lineups with. We're going to talk about it all. We're going to build some quality lineups, some ones that maybe won't be duped. And we're going to do that right after this intro. Oh, that's a fast intro now, guys. I don't get the time to collect myself. But welcome, everyone. It's Splash Play here, the fantasy football podcast for every game under the sun. And I am Chris Spags. And today, that game is Showdown. And I'm actually crunching some lineups in the background right now for this Titans-Packers game. I was just watching the ETR stream, competing against my podcast partner, Pete, for your views right now. So help a brother out. Please hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel. Oh, the neon flashing gift. There we go. Neon flashing gift. Please like the video. Please leave a comment if you're watching after the fact, and please subscribe here. Trying to do the best I can. You might notice some new thumbnail formats for the channel. You might notice some new things on the channel here. Of course, me going Monday to Thursday, every single Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 2 p.m. And Fridays, of course, the main event with myself and my podcast partner, Pete Overzet, here at 10 a.m. on the channel. So come back for that one. But I'm excited to get some things going on this channel, excited to do some new things, and excited, of course, as always, to bring you guys some quality lineup builds here on the show. News items to talk about, though, up top, some important ones to hit on today for this slate. We do have some injuries to note. Randall Cobb back tonight on DraftKings, priced at $200 on this slate. He is likely to come up a lot in an optimizer if you are optimizing today on Fantasy Cruncher or one of the other ones out there that people might trust, so keep that in mind. Randy Bullock, the kicker for the Titans, also out tonight. His replacement kicker is going to be Josh Lambo at the same price point. So if you, for some reason, built lineups in advance, which, as I talk about many times on here, you should never do, keep it that in mind that you should switch over to Josh Lambo there, $4,200 for both guys. Shout out to Steven Leibovich. Shout out to everybody else hanging out with me again today. Of course, we appreciate everybody who hangs out on this YouTube channel, and I personally appreciate each and every one of you who hang out with me. And I will give you guys the quick sales pitch as well for why you should care about what I'm talking about, because I've realized that sometimes I don't do a good enough job extolling the virtues of the show, extolling the virtues of what we're trying to do here. There's less than 1,000 people in the world who've won a showdown contest within the last year. Definitely ones that have won as much money as I have doing it. So that's why I feel uniquely qualified to give you guys the insight here that I work really hard at to try to build quality lineups for you. And I know there's a lot of talk recently on Twitter about people with the Fantasy Receipts account drumming up a lot of hate, a lot of defensive, I guess, content creators out there. At the end of the day, you got to follow the money, follow the people who've learned at the hands of other people who've won a lot of money, people who've really trained here, trained like a ninja is what I'm trying to make it sound like, but studied the NFL craft, studied the NFL, been paying attention. I have the great data like we have at Football Outsiders, of course, all the other data sources I pull as well, PFF, Sports Info Solutions, all of that. And you can see some of that data on the fancy data video that I put down in the channel below. So please check that out as well. The point being, I'm doing everything I can to bring you guys good info. I will keep grinding here every day, and I want you guys to feel that comfort knowing that I'm never going to mislead you. I'm never doing anything to try to fuck you over. That is the promise here we have on Splash Play. Only the best plays, only the best info possible, in the hopes that you guys can win some money, and I can really win some money. That's really the key thing for me, is to win some money here. But of course, it's money time, guys. It's money time, guys. Let's flip the hat. Let's get into it. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to Nate as well. Saying, Spags, what's up, man? I appreciate it, Nate. Thank you for hanging out, man. But let's get into it here. Let's pull up the stochastic projections. And of course, as my fucking dumb face on a dollar bill still on the screen, you can see the stochastic projections on the screen here. Some key players that are going to come up a lot tonight. Derrick Henry, to me, is coming up in every lineup so far. For the most part, and especially in the optimal lineups where there's no randomness, no groupings forced in by what I'm trying to do to build unique lineups. And I am crunching, by the way, in advance today. So I'm crunching actually as we're talking right now in the hopes that I can speed it up and get those 2 crunches that I pull in here with 33% randomness, with 66% randomness as well, and talk about that stuff. But that's going in the background, so hopefully I'll have that in a timely fashion today. Key value plays that are going to come up a lot. Randall Cobb is going to be unavoidable today. And it doesn't mean that you should play him, but it does mean if you are using the math, if you are using an optimizer out there, Randall Cobb is going to come up quite a bit because 6.1 fantasy point projection. He has a value metric. You could see here from Stochastic of 30.6, salary $200. He was likely not expected to play by DraftKings, but he's back out there. You know, he can be a bit of a safety blanket for Aaron Rodgers. And even with Christian Watson on the upswing, Randall Cobb is likely a play that people will force in there just to try to get some exposure to him, even though, you know, really you can make your own questions either way, but he is really hard to avoid mathematically overall. Other things to note here, Hassan Haskins, another cheap guy who potentially could see some burn if we saw Derrick Henry exit the game early, whether that be due to a blowout, whether that be for whatever reason. Cody Hollister coming up a lot, but these are the value guys. People always ask about the $200 cheapies. These are guys that have a projection on them, that are playable. And of course, the best thing you can do for yourself is pay attention to the actives and inactives as we get closer to game time. Because sometimes guys come into a game, sometimes guys get ruled out. That can materially affect how much you should be playing these shitty players out there who would never matter on an NFL main slate, but matter very much for what we're trying to do for a DraftKings showdown NFL slate like we have tonight. Also worth pointing out today, the implied total: Tennessee 18.8 implied points, Green Bay 22.3 implied points. So not the highest total. It's come down a half point over the course of the week so far. Big matchup things that I would point out as well. And I'll go big screen for myself for this one. Big matchup things to note today. And the stuff that I talk about again on that data show that I did yesterday, but we'll talk more about as we move forward as well. The rushing success rate for Green Bay's defense. They're allowing a lot of success on the ground for the run game, which obviously is something that should benefit Derrick Henry. As I talk about a lot, if you can combine sort of the NFL analytics stuff, the advanced data that matters from sites like Football Outsiders, from sites like PFF, from sites like Sports Info Solutions, other great sites out there as well, doing a lot of data pulls that actually add value to what you're trying to do. If you combine that data with what looks like a good projected play with fantasy projections, you're going to often find plays that look solid, that look unavoidable. That's why Derrick Henry's on the thumbnail. He's a key decision point. Game flow wise, you could certainly see him get game scripted out. But on paper, this matchup, again, a 46% success rate for the run game going against Green Bay, 0.029 rushing EPA, which is actually one of the worst marks in the league in terms of run defense. It's a nice Derrick Henry spot on paper. You also have Green Bay allowing 5.2 adjusted line yards. It's a lot of running room that Derrick Henry can lead up to. That would be the hope for him, certainly. But line yards, a key stat as well that shows, where's the push coming? Where's Green Bay getting their push defensively? Where's the offensive line getting pushed against them? It's a spot where Derrick Henry should be able to get to that second level pretty fast. And obviously, we know if they miss tackles on him, he's going to be able to break it even further than that. So Derrick Henry, you might not want to play him strategically because of the ownership going his way. But on paper, it does seem like a good spot as well. Worth pointing out, Green Bay also only stuffs the run 12% of the time. So that's one of the lower marks in the league as well. For Green Bay's defense, going against Tennessee's defense, Tennessee has struggled against the deep ball. That is why I unfortunately publicly touted Cortland Sutton last week, because I thought he'd be the guy to take advantage. Ended up being mostly Jalen Virgil, who ends up spiking the big upside in that game. But on the year, Tennessee giving up a 1.29 EPA boost, that's estimated points added, giving up that on deep passes. So plays over 20 plus air yards. They're also giving up a 57% completion rate, 22 yards per pass on attempts overall of 20 plus air yards. So on paper, Christian Watson makes sense here. The issue is, does he get the same amount of snaps? Does he get the same amount of opportunity with Randall Cobb back in? They play different areas. Cobb plays mostly in the slot. But when you keep that in mind here, there's definitely some data points that would point you to certain game builds that could come up here. Let's get back to the screen. All right, other plays here of note, guys. You can see their projections. And again, pay for stochastic data. These numbers will move around. If the Vegas total moves throughout the day, the numbers will certainly be important for you to pull in yourself. You can see it on the screen here. And, I'll be back at their stream on Sunday morning again. So hopefully they won't mind me giving away the freebies here. Ownership-wise, we're going to see some chalk plays up top here. Derrick Henry projected for 80% ownership. My thought would be that could get up to 85%, but sometimes it can be a little bit hard to thread that needle of projected ownership with how the field goes. Aaron Jones here, 57% expected ownership by them. Good amount at captain. It's worth pointing out, too, 22.4% expected ownership for Derrick Henry at captain. That's a pretty lofty number overall, but certainly that means you can play Derrick Henry in utility, and at least you are getting away from that portion of the field. So that is something that I do pretty often with the chalk captain plays. D. Owen saying it feels like a Lazard flop flag. I think Lazard is an interesting play tonight, and he's going to be decently owned. As you can see on the screen, he is projected to be a top 5 owned player at 42% expected ownership. 9% at captain, though, does have some appeal. And I'm with D. Owens on this take because I think a lot of people will go to Christian Watson. We saw him really thrive last week with the deep balls, certainly making the most out of a limited target share. But overall in the year, Allen Lazard, 1.9 deep targets per game, 83.3 air yards per game. Like, Lazard has been the one getting that deep ball work. So logically, based on volume, he would be the guy you could expect could benefit from Tennessee's defense being so bad against deep balls. But the spot, obviously, a lot of people will chase that Watson number. Does that mean you go to Lazard? I think it depends on the ownership. And right now we do see comparable ownership for Lazard and Watson, but a good amount more for Watson, or a good amount for Lazard, rather, more than Christian Watson. Again, 42% expected ownership overall for Lazard, 28.3 expected for Christian Watson. Everyone's pouring onto Watson, anointing him a wide receiver one and ignoring the actual wide receiver one. Yeah, we all know that's Randall Cobb. I think. No, I agree with you. I think that it is more of a Lazard spot. Lazard is a guy that I've forced in a good amount to some lineups this year, so I certainly don't mind trying to get him here. Let me import my 33% randomness crunch here. I'm going to run the 66% one, so I have that number for you guys, and we can pull it up and actually pick out some good lineups and try to get this show under half an hour. That's the goal. Again, I know Pete and Brick are streaming right now on Pete's channel. It's always hard for me to compete against Pete, both literally because less people watch live, but also because I know they're doing a great job giving the information they're doing on there, talking about the showdown stuff too. So if you want to go check them out, come back here. No problem. We'll just build lineups, and I'll be here waiting for you. Not really, but the video will be, certainly. All right. So let's put this over here. We got the batch with the 33% in. And again, the crunches I do every single slate to build the lineups that I like to build. I'll build one batch at 33% randomness. I'll build another batch at 66% randomness. I'll build another 66% randomness crunch with 2 uniques on Fantasy Cruncher. And I'll build a 99% crunch on Fantasy Cruncher as well. Combine it all together, sort it out, pick out the lineup builds that I want to make. So that is what we're doing on there. Let's go over to DraftKings. Let's try to hand build a lineup here first. And let's see if we could build one that's different here. As you can see, crushing it balance-wise. I now feel the pain of every show where it's like I usually register my lineups first thing in the morning. Now, before the show, I don't register them all just because I want to make sure like I have a good amount of money on here and I look like I have credibility as a result. But have no fear, guys. I did, in fact, lose some money on Monday slate. Not a lot, though, but did lose some. But let's build it here. I think right away... Well, let's try to build what the chalk lineup will be. I think it's a Derrick Henry captain as chalk. I think D. Owens is right about Christian Watson. People will probably force him in, so let's put him in the flex. If we are playing him, we can go either way with Aaron Rodgers. I think let's play Aaron Jones instead. Is there another Titan that would make sense here? We're spending a lot of money up top. So let's see if we can get cheap with another Titan. Maybe a Titans kicker. Why not? Let's go Josh Lambo's way, see how that looks for now. And then... Well, people won't play Westbrook-Ikhine, I don't think. So I wouldn't worry about that one. Okongwu actually might be a better value play. And I think the field's going to get to 4-2 Packers builds, probably not 3-3s. So let's see what else we can get with this build here. Maybe DeGuara as a value. Actually, no, Cobb, of course. The value of chalk is going to come up very easily. Let's put him in. Though honestly, him still having the IR tag on DraftKings could drive the ownership down a lot. Cobb, normally, whenever I see a player who's $200 who projects a little bit too well, fits into lineups a little bit too cleanly, that is a guy you can try to avoid in Showdown. But because this IR tag being on him on DraftKings and him being eligible to return today and being planned to be activated, as you can see from the news item, that could actually drive the ownership down enough to make him a net neutral play. So something to keep in mind as we build lineups going on here. And we have 11-2 left. I feel like given that we have 2 pass catchers, Rodgers would fit in here. So we'll see if this is actually what the chalk lineup comes up with the math on Fantasy Cruncher using those stochastic projections. But my chalk lineup build here that I think is a pretty obvious one, though leaving $800 on the table always going to make you a little bit different from large portions of the field. Derrick Henry at captain, Christian Watson, Aaron Jones, Randall Cobb, Okongwu, Chig is what he's going by on here. I think his full name is Chigarun or something like that. And I don't mean to disrespect the man because tough name, man. Tough name for me to get out while doing these streams. And Aaron Rodgers is the group here rounding it out. So Rodgers, Okonkwo, Cobb, Jones, Watson, Derrick Henry at captain. I think that's a very obvious build that people will land on a lot. OG Mans fan, one of our regulars, asking, are we chasing Watson or the fact that Rodgers finds a wide receiver to have a love affair with? He stays committed to that relationship. It seems like he's wanted to get Watson out there. Like a lot of the quotes that Rodgers has said in recent weeks, and maybe he was, maybe talking more about Teray, but it felt like he's been throwing Dobbs under the bus a lot. Dobbs certainly still hurt in this game, so he won't be out there either way. But I think that he likes Watson, or he likes one of Watson and Teray. So if we're going to really try to figure out, read the tea leaves of Aaron Rodgers' emotional leans, I think that that's one that certainly either guy would be a guy that Rodgers has wanted to get onto the field. Do you think that that matters actually for when he has his little safety blanket, his little short throw guy and Randall Cobb out there, when he's also got Alan Lazard out there? I think that's where the difference point could be tonight. And it really depends on what the field does with Christian Watson, because Watson coming off the big game, casual players love playing those big box score games. It's hard to ignore what Watson did on primetime, or not primetime TV, but on national TV against one of the most popular teams in the nation. So I think Watson's ownership, it's going to be higher than whatever Stochastic projects just because of that chalk public kind of philosophy that they have. But will it get as high as Lazard? I think that's a good question to ask. If these guys were, even if they were both 42%, even adjusting for the salary difference, I would want to play more Lazard. But I could certainly see that, there could be a point where Watson could hit 50% ownership and it wouldn't be crazy just because of the amount of casuals that'll play in a Thursday night football slate and the amount of people who just check those box scores, and we'll go there. Steven likes shots at Burks. He did have 6 targets last week. Burks, I think, is the more logical pivot point to Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, who I just don't think it's possible for him to have that game again. To me, that was a situation where Burks coming back in his first game off a turf toe. You'd expect a little bit of a lull there, a little bit of a ramp up for him to get to his full abilities. But I think Burks has really gotten he's gotten the workload whenever he's been healthy enough to be out there. Westbrook-Ikhine, I think, is kind of the same better and best ball type of player, the same boom bust kind of player that we know, and try to avoid when they're chalky on showdown slates, maybe try to get in captain a little bit more. But I agree overall, like Burks to me, a more appealing captain play, a more appealing play and utility, more appealing play really across the board than Westbrook-Ikhine will be. But you can see also the projections are pushing you more towards Burks. These are the sorts so far. Again, this is a 33% crunch that I did. But Burks coming up 27% of the time at utility. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine coming up at 9% of the time. We'll see how that gets affected when we get the 66% crunch in. And let's go to the optimal real fast while this lineup hopefully finishes up. I feel like I was thinking before the show, like, oh, this will be like, when chefs prepare the food in advance and you see them prepare part of the food and then you see like, oh, the finished product then when they don't make you watch them bake and do the whole thing. And nope, Fantasy Cruncher still could not get this done in time because it's complicated crunch and showdown lineups. I will say it a lot. Just give yourself some time here. I always try to give a 2-hour window before I start building lineups or before lineups have to be in. At the minimum, just because you want to make sure you get the crunches right. You want to make sure you get all your data in. You want to make sure that you have everything looking good. So that's just my personal suggestion. From the optimal crunch, though, this is going to be your optimal lineup. So let's compare it to what I just built here. Derrick Henry at captain, Randall Cobb, Mason Crosby, A.J. Dillon, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, 49.8 salary. So again, people love spending more money on showdown, kind of chalky builds. This is one that right away you should not play tonight because it's very obvious. Overall builds, though, let's see. So 5-player stacks for Green Bay. That would be a Green Bay onslaught. Comes up 7 out of 25. 4-player 4-player stacks of Green Bay. Comes up 14 out of 25 times. So in 21 out of 25 lineups, there's at least 4 Green Bay players going in there. That would naturally push me more towards 3-3 builds. Would also make me pretty comfortable taking 4-2 Titans forward builds because those are not coming up at all in the optimal crunch. But this is the first thing I do in every slate, guys. So if I can give you one bit of information from showdowns, this is certainly one that I think will make it into our 3 things at the end of the video that I'm going to give you guys as plays to try to avoid or just things that the field will be doing. But overall, like, if these 5-1 Green Bay onslaughts come up a lot, they're going to be played quite a bit. 4-player stacks Green Bay coming up very easily, and that's just an optimal crunch. You got to assume the field then will be heavily having at least 4 Packers in there. And one way to get different, you can play all the plays you want. You can play all the chalk plays. You could try to get just a little bit different. But if you play a 3-3 build, if you play a 4-2 Titans build, I think that's one where you can start to get really different. And certainly a 5-1 Titans onslaught doesn't look the best according to Vegas totals, but let's say Derrick Henry gets loose. 5-1 Titans onslaught could be a move too, so I would have no issue playing those tonight. Steve is saying, so in a showdown narrative, I've been telling myself that in a short week, the Packers may be more inclined to full share at running back. Certainly possible on the year with what we saw in the beginning, especially with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. Throughout the course of the year, it looks like right now Aaron Jones is at 41 snaps per game. A.J. Dillon's at 32 snaps per game. Aaron Jones is at 17 intended touches per game. A.J. Dillon's at 13 intended touches per game. But they both roughly get the ball the same amount of the times as they're on the field. It looks like a 42% rate for A.J. Dillon and a 42.5% rate for Aaron Jones. So if you do expect that to be a pretty even split, fading Jones or playing Jones with Dillon is certainly one thing you can do that I think the field doesn't like playing 2 running backs from the same team, even though in showdown you certainly can get there. And like Steven is saying, on a short week, like you can find 2 running backs be a focal point for what the Packers are trying to do. Let's combine these big crunches, though, and see what we can get here in the hopes of me somehow not going on for longer than a half hour. But Lord knows I do love talking. I do love talking. And, of course, tomorrow, come back, 10 a.m., me and Pete will be reunited once again for the Friday Splash Play, the flagship Splash Play show that I prepare all week for to come bring it right in that Pete Overzet face. But go tune in tomorrow at 10 a.m. here, as for some reason the Wi-Fi connection is dying out, even though I'm on Ethernet. Classic StreamYard. All right. What are some lineups we would build here? So right away, let's see how many. So we get 2 onslaught builds for Tennessee right now. I think right away, these would be lineups that I actually would play. I also like in this build that you're getting Lazard, not forcing in Aaron Rodgers. This to me is inherently going to be a unique lineup, even though you have Derrick Henry at captain. Can Tennessee go into Green Bay and win the game? I think that's certainly more likely than the Commanders going into Philly to win the game on Monday. It's all relative, obviously. Like, it wasn't a build that I thought actually had the most livelihood. And that is one lesson I had from Monday too, where as you guys saw on the stream, I was saying, hey, think about playing more Commanders. Think about forcing some guys in. The one thing I didn't do was forcing Terry McLaurin at captain. And I think it could be helpful to think about, hey, if this away team who's an underdog does pull off a win, and, again, not as big of an underdog for Tennessee as it was for Washington on Monday, but how do they really get there? It's not just the onslaught build. It's also like, hey, you want to have a Terry McLaurin at captain, or you want to have a Derrick Henry at captain. You want to have a big upside play at captain. And that was a mistake I had, where I had some Heineke captain lineups. I had some Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson captain lineups. That was my Commanders exposure. And Robinson was a good play. I think I talked about him and Gibson being both solid plays. Both guys get there on Monday. But this spot, I think, is one where Derrick Henry at captain coming up in a 5-1 onslaught. That is literally how the Titans would win this game and be able to get to a 5-1 onslaught. That would be optimal. 4-2 builds look a little more appealing. And again, feel free if you want to take these lineups, go ahead. There's a chance I might play some of them, but the numbers move around throughout the course of the day. So I won't steal my pal Pete's "Don't dupe me, bro" build. You can dupe whatever you want here. Follow your hearts if you see something on screen that you like. Derrick Henry at captain with Randall Cobb, Treylon Burks, Robert Woods, Ryan Tannehill, Aaron Rodgers. You can see the correlation I have here, of course, in the groups that I put in. And I can pull those up if you guys are curious about that. But Derrick Henry coming up as captain with Randall Cobb. What are the unifying themes, though? This is sort of the question that you got to ask yourself right away. Now, Lunchable Connoisseur. Shout out Lunchable Connoisseur. Shout out everybody in chat who hangs out with me, even when Pete's doing great content on his other channel. All right, so let's see here. Unifying themes. So in the optimal, Derrick Henry came up everywhere. So let's go there first. So Derrick Henry coming up 76% of the time at captain, coming up 24% of the time at running back. So he is in literally every lineup. Aaron Jones coming up 80% of the time at utility, 8% of the time at captain. So he's coming up in about 90% of these optimal lineups. That's one thing you can do right away is you could flip Aaron Jones, play him at captain, play Derrick Henry at utility. Still probably going to be pretty chalky, but definitely a build that I think can start to get a little bit more unique. Because really what you want to do for showdowns is shave away these little swaths of ownership, pull away the Jenga pieces that everybody else is building around to feel comfortable about. And it does feel like right now the field's going to be comfortable about building around Derrick Henry at captain and taking Aaron Jones at utility. So that's one thing you could flip. Randall Cobb coming up at captain. Randall Cobb at captain. If he hits, first of all, it's going to be tough because that allows pretty much every good play here. As you could see, even what the chat was talking about with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones in the same lineup, that's in this optimal lineup build. Again, with no randomness, with just a pure projections in there. Randall Cobb at captain with A.J. Dillon, Ryan Tannehill, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry. Randall Cobb at captain with Robert Woods, Ryan Tannehill, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry. It does feel like Cobb at captain is a thing people will force their way to. I don't hate it as a play, but you got to keep in mind if you have Randall Cobb at captain, I would really watch the salary number and try to get 49,000-ish, or at least, Randall Cobb at captain with no Derrick Henry, Randall Cobb at captain with no Aaron Jones. That's at least one way to get different there. But be mindful if you're playing Cobb at captain, you're not being sneaky. And if anything, a lot of people might try to do that. More people actually might try to do that than usual just because you can get all the stars in. Fade Rodgers and Watson, you can play what you want, maybe. I mean, I think that's what this Cobb lineup is doing here. So that's the one that, to me, I mean, obviously they're still forcing Rodgers in. But yeah, like I think people will try to jam in all the star plays, and it feels like it'll be achievable to do that. So I think a stars and scrubs lineup to me feels like it's going to come pretty naturally to people, or they're going to try to force their way there. So one that, maybe omits those $200 players, Randall Cobb, if he's going to be obvious, but also probably going to be a decent enough play. Maybe you just don't play Randall Cobb. That's kind of a tough thing to say when the math is clearly putting him in a lot of lineups, but that is one that jumps out to me. Kickers, it looks like going to be in 44% of lineups. I do not have the strong opposition of Mason Crosby that I had on Monday to Jake Elliott. Jake Elliott bombed miserably, so hopefully you guys tailed me on that one. But Mason Crosby here, 36% of the time coming up, probably means he ends up with a 20 to 30% ownership overall in utility. That's fine by me. Defense, no Titans defense coming up, so that's another way to get different, though obviously they're not going to be a well-projected play, but certainly they've shown the upside. Mike Vrabel able to kind of scheme for all sorts of teams, so I could see playing Titans defense being one way to get different that is not going to be obvious projection-wise. What's the story you say if Henry smashes? How other Titans get there for correlation? That would make me want to play the Titans D maybe. I think that's fair. I mean, the fact that Titans D doesn't come up a lot means that if you play them with Derrick Henry at captain, you're probably getting different enough there. Let's see what comes up in the randomized crunch with the Titans defense in there. But I think playing Titans D, just whenever you see like, so defense is so volatile. When a defense comes up in your optimal lineup, I think that's when you go, all right, maybe I don't want to play them that much because they can easily give up enough points. They could not get a touchdown, whatever the case may be. But if the Titans don't come up at all, only 6% of the time across these 600 lineups that got crunched, I think you can put them in and feel like you're actually getting a decent play. And I did win, my big win a couple Monday nights ago was playing the Browns defense. Nobody was playing there. So, home defense a little bit different as a dog than an away defense as a dog. But still, I think the Titans D, to me, not a great price point for them at 4,400. I think they're perfectly viable to play here. And honestly, these builds that are coming up with Titans D, to me, make a lot of sense. Even this one, Derrick Henry. So this build that you can see here, Derrick Henry at captain. So he still smashes, but Cobb, who's going to be able to get there as our easy value play. Mason Crosby kicking more field goals means there's less touchdowns to go around for Cobb, for Aaron Rodgers, for Aaron Jones. And then maybe the defense just gets one away from Aaron Rodgers or a fumble or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of ways this lineup could happen here. And one thing I will identify too that I like in all these Titans lineups that are up top, under 49,000, under 48,000. So these are cheaper lineups that are getting up. And still coming up in a decent, not a very random crunch. It's still a highly projected lineup here at an 83.3 projection compared to our cash game optimal here, 86.2. So anything within a 10-point spread, I feel comfortable playing. So I think these Titans defense builds, honestly, Steve, I think right away on a good point here. Playing Titans with Derrick Henry is one way to correlate. People just won't be doing. And it's a loose correlation with defense and running back. That's one that I think old school DFS, old school fantasy heads will tell you, oh, you play running back with your defense and it's going to naturally, align perfectly. It does make sense game script wise, but ultimately for showdown, you just need that one touchdown. So you can play Derrick Henry with the Packers D, and I wouldn't hate that either. It's just a matter of getting that one luck box touchdown. Let's see any good ones here. Josh Lambo, I think, also will be a little bit undervalued today just because, again, he didn't come up very much in that optimal crunch, and people will play Randy Bullock. It's not going to be a heavily played kicker overall just because kicker's not coming up a ton of times anyway, but also because I think the injury notification will mark Randy Bullock accordingly on DraftKings. But just having a new kicker in there, a name people don't know, a name that people just don't get to. Casuals who are hand building on the toilet, which is what I always think about when anything in the internet, you're competing against people in anything you do who are just doing something on the toilet. People building on the toilet will not get to Josh Lambo, will not even know he's on the team. So something to keep in mind for yourself. If you really want to play a Titans kicker, Josh Lambo will probably be underappreciated. Lunchable Connoisseur hand-built one this AM, and Henry/defense got pretty snug with Torrey. I don't think Torrey is a good play today. I think getting Cobb back in as well as the Watson outlier game, and you still have Watkins hanging around, and you still have Lazard there. I don't think Torrey is the move today, but certainly a low-owned play. And I guess if he busts, he did kind of bust a semi-chalk last week with Watson ending up as a better play, even though Torrey had some heat in the fantasy streets out there. I would say from my perspective, Torrey may be interesting just as a low-owned dart throw play, but not one I would try to force my way to, especially what is his salary? 1,200. Man, that's honestly cheap enough where he might be a decent lever to Cobb. I just don't know that he's a better play than Cobb. Obviously the projection is going to push you towards Cobb, but Torrey, a pivot point for sure. How much does Lazard come up? Because Stochastic had Lazard pretty decently owned, but he seems like he's not coming up a crazy amount here. In the optimal, he only comes up 16% of the time. No Lazard at captain. Lazard might be my favorite Green Bay receiver. Just relative to what the ownership will be and what the ceiling is. Yeah. Cobb, man, it's just too easy to get to Cobb. That's really the main thing. And I don't know how to handle it because of that IR tag on DraftKings, where it's so easy to get to Cobb. He's a name people know. He's been playing football for fucking 30 years at this point. So everybody knows Randall Cobb if they're a casual playing this slate for Thursday Night Football. That said, I really do feel like they're going to figure out that he is not an injured reserve and play him heavily. Because this Q tag that you see on Cobb here, people really do run away from these IR tags, these Q tags, and just assume the guy is out. They don't do their fact check. They never trust the casino to give you the news that you need to actually make decisions. But people do that a lot. And I think that's something where if this tag goes away by, let's say, 5 p.m., I'm going to think that Randall Cobb is going to steam up a lot ownership-wise because of the hand builders putting him in. But I think right now it's hard to say if he's a sharp player or not. I think the way that I'll handle Randall Cobb tonight is half my lineups will have him and half of them won't. Because, again, he really makes everything work, but also he's just way too obvious. Randall Cobb comes up in 96% of lineups overall, 8% of the time at captain. Yeah. Who else comes up everywhere? Let's see that. So Derrick Henry, you talked about, he's in literally every lineup. You want to get different from the field. And this is one thing that I didn't talk about up top. You want to get different from the field. The way to do that is to not play Derrick Henry. So let's see if we could find some Derrick Henry line or some non-Derrick Henry lineups. You could forget Bart Starr to Randall Cobb in Super Bowl I. That's true, honestly. You got to respect the longevity, if nothing else. Like we certainly have grown to hate dusty players on this channel here, the Splash Play YouTube channel of ours. But I do think any guy who can play a tough position, can play football really in general and do it into your mid-30s. Like I was talking about Tyler Lockett on the last stream, I think, just how bald he is and how it kind of threw me for a loop to see him on the sidelines recently. But like, I think sometimes you just got to respect these guys. And just, if they can keep going and keep doing it at a decent enough level, kudos to them. And Cobb is seemingly doing that, at least for Aaron Rodgers' sake, if not for ours. All right. Other builds that we can get to that I think would be interesting leverage off of Derrick Henry. So, okay. So then we're playing Hilliard. I also would not be opposed to playing Hilliard with Henry. I don't know exactly what the game script is that would get both these guys there, but Hilliard's got enough pass game work, enough red zone targets as well on the year. He's getting about 0.4 in the red zone per game, which is not a lot, but for a showdown, seeing any sort of positive number in that category is a good one. So Hilliard being a guy that gets out there in the flat, catches a touchdown, and you still have Derrick Henry at captain, I think is a pretty unique build overall, even if you are doing a 4-2 Packers build, which is going to be very popular, as we talked about. The ones, though, where I think you would make the most money would be without Derrick Henry. He is everywhere. He is everywhere. I got to say, so again, I'll do the three things at the end of the video. Right now, if you are a casual player, you're going to throw 5 lineups in tonight. You're going to watch the game on Prime, try to have a good time. And I said this for Jalen Hurts on Monday, and this is just really the extremist angle you could take for yourself. If you want to have 5 really purely concentrated bullets, like Colombian cut cocaine, you can just snort them straight into the bloodstream and feel it right away. The way to do that for your lineups is to not play Derrick Henry tonight. Like if you want to give yourself the best shot to win $500K on 10 or less lineups, 5 or less lineups, don't play Derrick Henry and hope that he just doesn't get there. And the logic for him not getting there is a lot easier than I think Jalen Hurts not getting there. Jalen Hurts, we knew was going to be involved in everything. We knew that he was going to at least get 1 rushing TD for the most part. There's a pretty high likelihood. There's a lot of ways he can get there, even if he has a bad game, which I think we kind of saw on Monday. Derrick Henry, though, if he has a bad game, this team just tanks and then they start passing the ball more. So there's a lot more obvious game script to how Henry doesn't get there. Man, I might just actually have to do a crunch later tonight for myself with Henry out of the player pool and see how that does. I find it hard to believe that Henry doesn't make it at least his utility, but in this situation where you just get Henry everywhere and the optimizer thinks we got to find ways to force it to Henry, you could probably build some really nice lineups without Henry. They're not coming up here. You can probably find some nice lineups without Henry. Here we go. Here's one. 5-1 Green Bay onslaught with Hilliard. Again, I don't want to normally play 50K lineups, but this is one where maybe you could get away with because you're not doing any sort of Derrick Henry in the spot. Aaron Rodgers at captain with Hilliard, Mason Crosby, Christian Watson, Allen Lazard, and Aaron Jones. That does make sense, but just not a lot of lineups coming up with Hilliard and without Henry, and that could be an interesting angle to play for yourself. Colombian cut, Spags got the South American hookups. Never been a coat guy. I've only done it a handful of times in my life, so that's the one thing I've gone for me. Big weed guy, though. I would love to have my Colombian cut weed if that was something that occurred. Probably not great to grow weed in a South American climate, I would think. All right, so no Derrick Henry lineups. Let's see. Man, so he comes up, even with the randomness on, he's coming up about 94% of the time. Oh, here's one without Derrick Henry. This doesn't fill you with joy necessarily, but Aaron Rodgers, Randall Cobb, Austin Hooper, Allen Lazard, Ryan Tannehill, Aaron Jones. That build makes sense to me because here's one way that Derrick Henry doesn't get there is Aaron Rodgers spraying the ball around, passing it a lot, getting ahead here with touchdowns perhaps to Cobb, touchdowns to Lazard, at least 1 touchdown to Jones. So you got to be a little bit worried about Jones outscoring Rodgers in any sort of positive Packers game script situation. But I think this is what you want to get to if you're not playing Henry. Like you're either playing Hilliard or you're playing Packers having a lot of success and making it so that Tennessee just can't run the ball at all. And Green Bay, it's been so hard for them to actually have high octane performances that I don't know. I have a ton of faith in that happening, but yeah, it definitely is an obvious way to do it. But otherwise, Derrick Henry just comes up everywhere, So for your 5 Colombian cut bullets tonight, just don't play Derrick Henry and hope you get that game script right. Woods and Tannehill, that's another good one. I personally will find my way to much less Derrick Henry, and it doesn't matter what it takes me. I will just get those lineups in there because when it's so binary. Again, when people will try to make this so binary, I think it's one of those things where you just can move a guy away. Just get away from this guy and be willing to lose your money if this guy smashes completely. But with Derrick Henry being one of the highest priced guys, I think actually the highest priced guy in the slate, and also the best projected guy, and also having an obvious game script out that could lead to him not getting there. I think you got to try to force in some no Derrick Henry lineups, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you. And then you also have to be willing to take Derrick Henry at utility instead of captain and just hope that he doesn't break a deep play. And that's tough. Again, the data does say that Green Bay's defense is going to give up some run production, but in the spot for Derrick Henry, like I feel like it's just too obvious to get there. It's too easy to get there. And people will probably see DVP rushing stats that also push them towards Derrick Henry. So if you can just try to control yourself and not play him everywhere, I think that's the wise move. Pete, how dare you? 6, I don't know if you know this, but the Monday through Thursday shows, no Pete's allowed. Literally forbidden, legally forbidden. If he shows up here, I'm going to fucking kick him out. Yes. No, Pete would rather compete with me with Brick, with another showdown player of the year candidate, potentially. Brian Hooper, of course, the great Brick. Yeah. Man, this is not the sexiest one. Like, this is really a tough slate to try to pin down my 3 things at the end of the stream. But I will say, okay, so thing number 1, everybody will be playing at least 4 Packers. So if you can get to a 3-3 Titans build, I think that's the first thing you should try to do if possible. If you are going to play a 4-2 Packers build or a 5-1 Packers build, find some way to get unique. As I always say on these streams, the ways to get unique on Showdown, spend less money. So like cut your salary to under $49,000, avoid a chalky player. So if you play a 5-1 onslaught with the Packers and don't play Derrick Henry, you're going to get different there. So that's another way to do that. But yeah, I think 4-man builds of Packers at the minimum are going to come up quite a bit. So try to get different there if you can. Thing number 2 is, I think, be willing to not play Derrick Henry. Everybody's going to play Derrick Henry. It makes sense numerically to play Derrick Henry, but football's a volatile sport. Football game scripts can get weird very fast. So I think not playing Derrick Henry right away is one way that you can get different from a lot of the field. And it makes sense. Like, it's not Lamar. It's not Jalen Hurts. It's not one of these guys that has a floor where it's impossible to imagine them not making any utility, impossible to imagine them not at least having a good shot to make it a captain. Derrick Henry, it just takes Green Bay scoring a lot of points. So how does that happen? It's pass game stacks of Green Bay. It's Aaron Jones at captain. It's a lot of those things. And I think you really, for your money, you owe it to yourself to try to build some portion of lineups tonight without Derrick Henry, no matter how much of an anathema that might feel like it is to you. This one's pretty good too. Aaron Rodgers at captain, Randall Cobb. So we're taking the easy, obvious value. Treylon Burks here. People will maybe be down on him at this price point, especially. Like, he has not had a ceiling to justify a $5,200 price tag. Is that correct? His best game of the year is 8.7 fantasy points. So this is one thing I think Cody was saying on ETR that I was listening to right before doing this stream. He was talking about how he wants to be early to Burks. And I would say for you guys out there too, like, I love Treylon Burks. If you were chalky on the slate, I'd be willing to not play him because I have so much of him best ball that I'm willing to just let that be the thing that makes me money. But I think from this perspective overall, Burks is at a price tag where you got to kind of force your way to get there. I think Burks is a good play just because there's nothing on the box score that's going to put casual players there. And also, he is a way that Derrick Henry doesn't get there. So that's kind of a win. But this build, though, with Jones a captain, Cobb, Burks, Watson, Tannehill, Rodgers. Can we get to Lazard here? Okay, you can't get to Lazard in this one. But this one, to me, if you had Lazard somehow in here, like, what would we have to do? We'd have to put Lazard there. Come down. Okay, this leaves too much money on the table potentially, but Titans defense with Treylon Burks allows you to get to Lazard with Rodgers. I kind of think that's appealing to me. Maybe you go up from Randall Cobb there to get different. Yeah, this is a lineup that, again, over 49,000, but still unique enough. And that's the thing to keep in mind here. Play the low salary lineups or play ones that have something inherently unique. There are not going to be a lot of Titans builds that omit Derrick Henry, have the Titans D, and also have Treylon Burks in there while avoiding the Randall Cobb very, very cheap value. So that's something to keep in mind here. It feels like this is one of these slates where a very obvious lineup could win it and not be duped. So that's something that I will just say out loud because that's a way that I think I will try to play today. This one also looks good. Aaron Jones, Randall Cobb, Treylon Burks, A.J. Dillon, Ryan Tannehill, Aaron Rodgers. I would absolutely play this lineup. It's a 4-2 onslaught for the Packers, so you are putting yourself construction-wise with a lot of the field, but you're getting under $49,000 in salary. You're getting away from Derrick Henry. You're playing a game script that makes sense for how Derrick Henry would fail. These are the lineups I think that you really need to prioritize more, that it's hard to talk about for all the content out there, for all the people out there that are doing showdown streams, because they're thinking about covering the very binary things. There's that, oh, is Derrick Henry a good play? Should you fade Derrick Henry? You got to do more than that. Like, if you don't play Derrick Henry, you're going to be in a similar construct of everybody else who decided to not play Derrick Henry. So what's the other lever to pull to not get there? That's like not playing a Randall Cobb. That's playing two running backs from Green Bay together. That's fading Aaron Rodgers and just putting a pass catcher in. Just find one of those angles to get unique if you are going to play a 4-2 Green Bay build, or even a 5-1 Green Bay build. But I think that to me is the important part, is like, you got to find one thing that people won't do in those same constructs. And if you have salary plus omitting Derrick Henry, plus you're at least leaving out one very popular player, like a Christian Watson, let's say, or Christian Watson and Lazard, that's definitely a way to get unique. Any good other no Derrick Henry lineups? How many points off the optimal is okay for me on the slate? So I'm always willing to go a little bit further off the optimal for showdowns, just because of the fact that the main goal for me is to have one of the 40, 50 lineups I'll put into the showdown big tournament tonight. The goal is to have that be the one that can break out. So that's what I care about the most. But I think in general, either 10 points off the optimal projected or 10%. I think if you want to play a little bit closer to the vest, the 10% could be more than 10 points on a bigger slate. That's normally the threshold I would try to look at. And all of these are safely in there because we had that optimal, I think, at 86. So these would still be playable. This one I like a lot. So anything where you have a 5-1 onslaught that fades the QB but gets a pass catcher in, I think is pretty unique. Aaron Jones, a captain, Randall Cobb, A.J. Dillon, Robert Woods, Allen Lazard, Aaron Rodgers. This one ties together a lot of the stuff we talked about, that maybe two Green Bay running backs can get there, that maybe Lazard can outscore everybody. You still get the Cobb value, which is a play that I think, if you don't want to move away from Derrick Henry, move away from Randall Cobb, I think is my takeaway there. Besides that, though, just playing Woods over Tannehill, like playing the pass catcher over the QB, is always a good move in showdowns where you only have this one player in there, because you're basically saying Tannehill sucked today, but he did enough to feed it to his PPR guy, Robert Woods. So Robert Woods puts up, 5 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. He's hovering then, basically around 16, 17 fantasy points. Like, that's something where it's very possible Ryan Tannehill doesn't get there. So I think that's kind of build that, to me, people don't do enough. We're just willing to take a receiver, not play the QB, still play the onslaught, still do the other things that people are doing a lot of, but you've gotten different by not playing Henry, by not playing Tannehill, and then just playing this pass catcher. This one, boy, Tannehill at captain with Cobb, Hooper, Lazard, Rodgers, Aaron Jones. This is another one too. You're doing something so inherently weird, like playing one of the QBs at captain, but in particular playing the worst QB, the guy that nobody wants to play at captain. You're also not putting any of the top tier pass catchers with them. You're not putting Robert Woods. You're not putting Treylon Burks with them. So that's good. You're avoiding Derrick Henry. Like, this lineup, to me, I'm surprised it's not projected worse, to be honest. But I think this one looks pretty decently projected, or decently projected enough to get in. And there's another logic point to it where, Tannehill, Green Bay gets ahead early. Derrick Henry's not on the field as much. Tannehill kind of luck boxes his way. He can certainly run for a touchdown. And that's something too to keep in mind for the groups. I am forcing in a pass catcher with Tannehill, but you can probably play a naked Tannehill just because he does run enough and he does sneak into the end zone enough. But your mileage will vary with that one, so choose accordingly for yourself. This one is nice. Treylon Burks at captain, Randall Cobb, Allen Lazard, Ryan Tannehill, Aaron Jones, Aaron Rodgers. I think that's a good one too. Cheap salary here. Wide receiver captain to capture the upside potentially. And you can get there early for Treylon Burks. I think that looks pretty solid to me. So now we're getting all of our no Derrick Henry ones. And it is like getting close to outside of projectable range where you feel good about it, where you are basically, 9 points off the optimal right now. But I would still have no issue playing any of these lineups. Like, these are actually literally lineups that I will play tonight, I think, just because there isn't enough no Derrick Henry lineups going around. This one, Rodgers at captain, we're saying Rodgers just smokes everybody, has the game of a lifetime, 3 pass catchers in here. This one is like really unique for a lineup that's eating up this much salary, 49.8. Rodgers at captain, Cobb, Woods, Watson, Lazard, Aaron Jones. I like that one quite a bit. Any of these, though, I think, like, honestly, any of these are in play. Because it's so hard to not get to Derrick Henry, you have to be willing to kind of hold your nose and play some lineups that aren't going to project as well. So if these are what come up with no Derrick Henry, so be it. Treylon Burks, solo Treylon Burks, same logic as I was talking about with Robert Woods. Perfectly fine with that. I typically don't crunch with two defenses, but how popular do I think that will be tonight? I don't think very, because we didn't get the Titans coming up at all in the optimal. Again, I'll pull that up for you guys to take a look at in case anybody's coming in from the Peach stream. But we got basically no Titans coming up in the optimal. So my thought is that the Titans will be under 10% owned, but at the very least under 20% owned for sure, which is perfectly fine range to play a defense. The Titans defense with Lambo and fading Derrick Henry kind of makes sense strategically. Chig Okonkwo not coming up at all here in the optimal, which is kind of interesting given that I think he actually is the tight end with the most juice for the Titans. And Nick Westbrook-Ikhine didn't come up at all in the optimal crunch. So this is what I'm seeing for the optimal with the stochastic projections, which of course get for yourself. It's stochastic. All right, so let's sum it up, guys. The 3 takeaways for the slate. I'll go full screen for myself and try to remember everything I talked about here. Everybody's going to be playing Green Bay builds at least 4 Packers. So if you play a 3-3 build or anything, favoring the Titans, you're going to get different right away. Everybody's going to play Derrick Henry. He's a great play tonight. Data-wise, he is a strong play, but he is a play that can get game scripted out fairly easily. So I would keep that in mind as well. Be unafraid to play some lines without Derrick Henry tonight. And my third observation, everybody who's using an optimizer is going to get to Randall Cobb. So that's a really easy, really obvious play that makes sense. He's coming back in. The one thing to keep an eye on, though, is see if, again, this IR tag for Randall Cobb, if that is there later on in the day, you can expect Cobb's ownership to come up. If the news is out there, if you see Adam Schefter tweeting, Randall Cobb is expected back and Aaron Rodgers is delighted, like whatever Adam Schefter would tweet about that situation. If you see that tweet, know that Cobb's ownership is going to soar up. But right now, he's more of a DFS optimizer play. And that's one, too, where you can leverage that. Like, who's going to be playing Randall Cobb tonight? It's going to be the guys who are using projections, the guys who are sharp. How do you get different from those guys? You just avoid some other parts that are coming up a lot and easily projectable. So that means if you play Randall Cobb, you could talk me into making a rule, don't play Cobb with Henry. And I think that would be a unique way to approach things and just get off the beaten path right away. But definitely keep an eye on where Randall Cobb's news items are, because that's an important one. Either way, guys, you guys know the drill by now. I'm doing these shows Monday through Thursday at 2 p.m., and I appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. So please hit the like button before you go. Also, subscriber-only mode is on for the chat now, so I don't have to deal with trade requests from people coming in. So shout out to the regulars who are actually subscribed and chatting in there. I appreciate all of you guys for hanging out with me today. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow at SplashPlayPod. And come back tomorrow at 10 a.m. because my pal Pete will be back in here in the Battle Dome of Ride or Die picks, competing with me once again. Shout out to the chat as well. That Shefty impression was spot on. Thank you, Six. I appreciate it. But I really do appreciate all you guys hanging out with me. So come back tomorrow for me and Pete, and I will see you guys then as soon as I can hit this intro. Bye. Good luck.